Welcome back to another post-media Ottawa Senators panel. I'm Bruce Garrioch, pleased to be joined today by two-time Olympic gold medalist Cheryl Pounder and TSN analyst. And Cheryl, as we speak today, the Senators are getting ready to close out the season, but I think people are already looking towards next year. And there are going to be changes. There are changes in every offseason. And one of the things I wanted to do with you today, and we've talked about it a lot over the course of the last few weeks, is go over the club's depth chart for next season. And when I look at the lines and defensive pairings, I think up front they need two things. Number one, I think they need a top six right winger. And on that fourth line, I think they need somebody on the left side. Let's talk about that top six. Number one, do you
Yep.
feel it's a need? And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I do feel it's need. I feel like it's been a need for a long period of time. I think we've known what Norris and Kachuk and Stutzla and Batherson can certainly do. We've seen Formanton elevate his game. You know what Connor Brown can do as well, in particular on the PK and just that veteran presence that he brings. And now you add Matthew Joseph into the equation. And so I think we've seen his versatility, the ability to go really throughout the lineup, whether it's on that top line, second line, or into a third line role. And if Matthew Joseph winds up on your third line next year, potentially, I mean, you are in a very good situation, although I'm seeing him slotted in somewhere in that second line position right now, possibly one based on how he's playing. But if you look at the right side right now, I feel like there is a hole there based on where Batherson plays, whether it's like on the one or the two. I think that there is a need right there as well, because if you have your players playing the appropriate positions, I see Shane Pinto coming back potentially with a Connor Brown alongside even a Formanton. And imagine that as a shutdown line with speed that can be opportunistic. And I think you're sitting in a good situation if you have a third line that's certainly in that position. But you need a top six, a bona fide top six with some veteran presence. And I think that'll just kind of layer the team appropriately.
And I think one of the things that certainly has been talked about here, Cheryl, is maybe a possible trade for a guy like Minnesota's Kevin Fiala. I don't feel like the Senators are in a position where they're going to be able to get an unrestricted free agent to fill that need. Do you think they're better off to go through trade?
Well, when you look at the pieces that the Senators have, I mean, it would be awesome to be able to get a Fiala. I know there's been a lot of talk about a Giroux and the ability
Yeah,
to get
yeah.
them in the top six, right? I mean, you've got contract with White. You look at Zaitsev. There are things that you can do or management can certainly do to attempt or try to bring these guys in. And I think that's going to be the big thing in the offseason. They've got a lot of young talent on this team, and they're just missing a few pieces. And so if they can get these pieces, maybe you're looking at a difference maker to start the season. And that is what's critical. We've seen a Sens team that has done particularly well in April for whatever reason it may be, but they've got to come out of the gate flying next year because you don't want to be having the same conversation. And I think they really do have to fill that void with players like that, because there is a little bit of a hole. You want to slot appropriate players into the positions that they're best suited to be in. And I think that the Sens certainly know that they've got five pieces up in the top six that can play interchangeably, but they need that six. And then what that does is it solidifies the third line. And I think those three lines are the real question marks. Of course, Shane Pinto coming back, he can be a 200-foot player. In particular for me, I know he's lost a year of development, but he is so smart. And he is a two-way center that has the ability to support. And I was really impressed last year watching him. I kept saying to myself, wow, does the puck follow this guy around? And then I kind of said, Cheryl, give your head a shake. He's in the right spot. He's got a good stick. He supports the play down low well. So I think, you're looking at a guy in that 3C hole right now. With opportunity to move. But I think that's where we're seeing that, or certainly I am. It's a matter of what are his flanks gonna look like as well, and that really relies and depends on what's above, what's in that top six.
And you brought the name up, and I think people here would love to see him as Claude Giroux. And just quickly on Claude Giroux, I mean, he come in, he could teach Tim Stützle and Josh Norris how to take faceoffs because he's one of the best faceoff guys in the league, Cheryl. veteran presence. He'd come home. To me, he'd be a perfect fit on a 2-year deal.
Well, I think everyone I think is talking about the same kind of stuff, and I love what you said about the face-off circle because with Stützle, just over, I think he's in around the 38% mark, and yeah, he's not mature yet. He's not physically mature. He hasn't been in the middle. He's going to learn, but if you want to keep him in that 2C hole, you want to surround him and insulate him with someone that can take key face-offs when needed, so he can develop through practice, develop within games, but in key face-offs, he can have someone come in and take it. Depending on whether DJ Smith wants to move him back to the flank. But I like Stützle in the middle. I think he's in that 2C hole right now. But I think, you got to insulate. You got to be able to align so these guys can grow. And what better than a veteran presence that is strong in those areas, who has learned the tricks of the trade and can share that information and can win some key face-offs, whether they're in the D zone or the offensive zone, as the season progresses, and watch Stützle and these guys progress in that position.
Just real quickly on the fourth line left wing spot I left open. Before we got on here, you brought up a great idea, and I think because he's DJ Smith's type of player, you're right. I should just pen him in there. Is Parker Kelly on that left side of that fourth line?
Yeah, and I think with the fourth line, you have opportunity to play with these lines because there are going to be guys outside of the 12 that have the opportunity to bump in and out of the lineup, a little bit of a carousel if you're watching them perform and play well. But really, when you're talking fourth line, you talk energy, guys that keep their feet moving, they get back. To present defensive structure quickly. They're trying to eat up some valuable minutes. To get some rest to your top guys and allow for matchups. And so I think this is key. And Parker Kelly has shown that he's got, that energy about him. He's had the opportunity to score goals early in his career. So here's a guy who's got some skill as well. But when you talk about a Parker Kelly, you talk about sort of a momentum changer. And I think that's his ability right now. So I could see him on that fourth line as well.
I let's go to defense now. I have pairings right now of Thomas Chabot, Artem Zub, Jake Sanderson, Travis Hamonic, Nick Holden, Eric Brandstrom. I don't like that group in that, to me, even though you're bringing in Jake Sanderson and Travis Hamonic is relatively new, I don't think there's enough change there. And I'm not sure why I feel that way, Cheryl, but I think you also feel that they need to get another defenseman.
Yeah, I still am of the mind that, and listen, I was a D, so I put a lot of weight on D, and in particular when you've got to protect the middle of the ice, and it's really critical that you take care of your house, if you will, back in your own zone. And when I look at this roster, I think Hamonic and Delzato are doing a fantastic job right now. I think they've been a consistent, steady, stabilizing force on the back end. I really do believe that. I just don't know if the sample size is large enough yet for a Hamonic. And the one thing he does have going for him being a right? I think this is something that someone like Brandstrom has against him right now. When you look at Brandstrom as a lefty in your scenario, Bruce, playing the right side.
Yeah.
And when I talk
and he hasn't been good on that side.
It's hard. He's a smaller defenseman. He's more of a skill zone exit guy who's going to quarterback one of your power plays. He's going to try to use the middle of the ice. And so when you put him on his offside, it's harder to steer the puck off the wall, and just the control of the puck on those zone exits. It's not as quick as he's on his backhand. And I think all of those elements, because he's not big, play a role. And I'm with you. I don't think he's played a ton there. I think he's looked a little uncomfortable in that position. So just in the mere fact of what you have on the left, I think Brandstrom is a question mark here. And you look at power play production. Yes, I think he quarterbacks it well. He's not a shot threat. But when you look at point production, it really isn't there. And you look at, I think he's got 9 assists or something, a couple goals. But when you look at someone like, what does Brandstrom has? Yeah, he's got 9 assists on the season. But when you look at someone even like a Zub, he's got 6 and 15, right? Yeah. So you got to sort of weigh this. And so I certainly have the mindset, I know you might disagree with me, Bruce, but you got a Lassie Thompson. And yet you have some young players that are also there, but I still think they need that veteran, solid, consistent presence that has performed, and that's something that I think is certainly big. And you look at Sanderson. I mean, if he is even remotely close to what the expectation of what he's done in college and what everyone knows he can do, I think you're looking for partners to be able to complement
Yeah.
Chabot and Sanderson. I think you need partners that allow them to be the players they are, not them playing for someone else, someone playing for them. And in that, you get the best out of them. And so, who are those partners for Chabot and Sanderson? Because they are going to be the cornerstones
Yep.
of your back end. And certainly, I like Zub, but again, I'm still kind of looking for that. You know, where else do we go here? And again, I've been a fan of Zelzado and Hamannik as partners now, because they're not just afraid. Like, they're veterans. Hey, if I got to get it hard off the glass, let's so be it. And sometimes that's a learned. Sometimes that's a learned skill, and I'd like to say I made a living out of it, but I didn't really make a living playing hockey.
You beat me to it.
Yeah.
You beat me to it.
But it's a skill.
Yeah. No depth chart is complete without goaltending. I don't know if Matt Murray's going to play before the end of the year. The hope is that he will, so he has some peace of mind going into the summer. My take on all of this, Cheryl, is the days of Matt Murray being handed anything are over. When he comes into training camp next year as the $6.25 million goalie, he's in a battle with Anton Forsberg for the number one job, as he should be.
Yes. When you look at what Forsberg has done, I think it was a great signing contract. You see what he has done, in particular, even the games against the Canadians. He's making the save that is needed to change the momentum in a game and to weather the storm. And when you walk into a game, or you're in a game and you know you have that between the pipes, that sort of level of consistency, I think it just adds an air of confidence from your entire team. But for me, it's managing and weathering those stretches where your team is under siege and just getting your legs set underneath you again. And that happens not just with veteran teams, but also with young teams like the Ottawa Senators. So I think it's a pivotal piece, and I think Anton Forsberg has certainly stood tall in the net. You got Matt Sogard underneath. I mean, huge body, huge presence. But if Forsberg can continue to do what he has done, showing the confidence and consistency in his game, it's going to be a tough situation for Matt Murray to reclaim that position.
Yeah, and I do think, just quickly here, that Philip Gustafson will be the odd man out one way or another. He's on a one-way contract next year. You can't keep three goalies. He won't get through waivers. I could see him being traded in the offseason. Quickly, I have some departures here. I think that Michael Del Zotto has put himself in a position where he can be dealt in the offseason now and go play for somebody, and that make room for some of the younger defensemen to be depth players. Tyler Ennis and Chris Tierney are unrestricted free agents. I don't see any scenario where they're back. I'm not sure. I would bring Gaudette and Gambrell back for depth. I'm not sure they will, but the two people I want to focus on, because they are tough to move, is Colin White and Nikita Zaitsev. Now, the Senators were close to a deal with Montreal at the trade deadline for Colin White. And his former agent, Kent Hughes, is a general manager. There was I think in the end, there was going to be some money problems where the Habs didn't want to take on some salary. Do you revisit that? And then let's go quickly through him, and then I want to talk about Zaitsev before we go here. So let's start with Colin White.
I think you have to revisit it. I think that you've got Pinto coming back into the fold. You've got Ridley Gregg underneath. And it's less about necessarily, what Colin White is bringing in terms of relative to the contract that he's holding and the money in that contract. And so I think that plays a big role into that. I don't know what your thoughts on that are, Bruce, but
no, I agree.
That's
totally
a hefty price. If you're paralleling it to sort of what the value in it is. And so when you're looking at guys like, the top six, or the sixth place for the extra man that I think the Senators are looking for in their top six, and how that will push everyone down. Where does that leave Colin White? I think, to justify the money, I think they've got to look to let it go. And the same thing when you talk about Del Zotto. I mean, I could see a situation here, and again, this is just us conversing right now. I haven't sat there and thought explicitly about it, but in terms of a Del Zotto and a Hamonic, could you see them as a third pairing if you brought in a top four?
I think they want Hamonic to play with Sanderson. I do, and that's just me, So
yeah,
I think their bigger issue, Cheryl, is how do you move on from Nikita Zaitsev? And I think he's got 2 years left on his deal at a lot of money. I don't have the salaries in front of me, but how do you move on from him? That's not going to be easy. Do you package him up to Arizona with a draft pick to try to get them to take on the money?
Well, this is where Pierre Dorian's got to be creative, and you see the creativity and the different elements that can come out. Whether it be at trade deadline or in the summer, these are not easy to do. Not easy to do. But when you look at this decor as a whole, it does make sense to try and be creative to move Zaitsev. You look at the numbers, you look at the pieces of the puzzle. You know what Zub has done for you and brought over the last year and a half. I think he's really turned a lot of heads in the ability to play with Shabbat. You see that there's a level of comfort there. When Shabbat comes back, Zub is physical. He has the ability to find shot lanes. I think we're starting to see a little bit of his offense. And when I mean offense, I mean just from activating from the blue line, getting shots through to the net. So really comfortable with that. He's been a wonderful ad and someone that I think they've seen develop. And I think he's been a big piece and reason as to why there's a question mark around this. You've mentioned Hamonic. And now again, the question underneath is if they're going to bring someone else in. It just makes the most sense to see both White and Zaitsev get moved. But the creativity, Dorian's going to have to be creative and figure this one out.
Okay, Cheryl, last question. If they get the two pieces we've talked about and get some goaltending, can they push for a playoff spot next year?
It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough just if you look at the division in itself. I think no matter which way you slice it, this team can push for a playoff spot if they get the acquisitions that they need. But you need the best out of all of these guys. You're going to need the best from the beginning of the year. You cannot get behind the eight ball. You can't come out and, get one win in your first 10 or whatever it might be. You have to play like they play down the stretch typically. And I understand there's less pressure and there's all of these other things in April. But I think these guys, they have a belief in a culture. And that's what I'm seeing. Again, I don't know them like you do, Bruce. You're in the building much more than I am. But I feel like these young guys certainly know their skill set. They believe in it. And now I think they need the organization to show that belief in them and go get them some key acquisitions. And if they get those key acquisitions to steady them, to provide a little more consistency, to teach, I think they're putting themselves in a much better position. And if it's not next year, it is just that. You're looking down the road with the hope and the understanding that, hey, we can do this. And I think that's the biggest thing here is you want to enter a season and say, hey, we have a potential shot at it. Not like it's going to happen, but we have a shot. We're not, this isn't going to be a lost season. We have a shot at it. And I think that's where they have to put themselves, because these guys are going to develop over the course of the year, another year. And then it's that following year. What are you looking at there? And so for me, it's a few years, but I think you have to enter with the belief that this could happen. And these guys have to play like they believe it.
Okay, Cheryl, before we started, you said you gave a speech yesterday and you dug into your sock drawer and brought out a couple of your close friends. Can you show your close friends to us and explain them?
Oh, yes, I can. They're right here. So this is my Olympic gold medal from 2002. All right.
I think I covered your only hat trick, right? When you beat the hell out of those poor Italian women, right?
No, that was this one. That was this one.
Oh, okay, sorry.
And I didn't quite get a hat trick, Bruce. I tried to go end to end for the third, but it was 17-0. I figured I probably shouldn't do it. And then that's the ribbon.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So everyone always asks me, what the hell is that? And I say that's the ribbon to the medal. And I always say that's the journey, the ups and downs. And yes, the celebration afterwards was quite fun. I wore my medal for 2 weeks, didn't take it off, but I've shared the medal quite a bit. And I always say that's the journey of a team, right? The ups and the downs, and that's kind of what it looks like. But it makes it the greatest victory. So, yeah, hard to believe that was so long ago and I'm ancient now. Yeah.
We appreciate your time today, Cheryl, and you're the only guest we have where Elizabeth, our producer, doesn't give me the 10 minutes. You're at 10 minutes, so you can stay on as long as you want. We appreciate your time. That's the Post Media Ottawa Senators panel. I'm Bruce Garrioch, pleased to be joined by two-time Olympic gold medalist Cheryl Pounder, also a TSN analyst. Thanks for today, Cheryl.
Thanks, everyone.